Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Triangle BNI. My name is Mike Manning, and each week we bring you a success story from Triangle BNI. If you are not familiar with BNI, it is Business Networking International, the world's largest networking organization, and our little slice of heaven here in the Triangle, Central North Carolina, Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill. Have about 30 chapters and growing, almost 700 members growing that as well. And like I said, each week we bring you a story. And today we bring you Jim Bowdish from Edward Jones Financial. Jim, good to have you here today.
Thanks, Mike. Good to be here.
Jim is president of RDOA Triangle Business Connections. They meet Thursday mornings. If you're an early riser, they meet Thursday mornings at 8 a.m. at Lucky Tree Coffee on Hillsboro. So please come out and join them. We suggest if you are starting a small business or you have a small business, you want to grow it, please come visit one of our chapters. You can go to trianglebni.com. There's a button on there that says find a chapter, and you can click on that and find out which chapters around town work for you, location, day, time, and everything, and just come visit. And you're going to meet some quality people. We're going to talk about what goes on in a BNI meeting during the show. And so give you some more feedback on that so you can understand a little bit better what it is. But we're going to talk to Jim today. And Jim, Edward Jones, 2018 is about coming to an end. How's the year been for you?
You know what? It's always interesting doing what I do. I should be a psychologist, not a financial advisor, because a lot of folks need to know what they own, why they own it, and they usually appreciate a little bit of advice. So, um, trying to keep people focused on their goals, and it's the same thing we do at BNI. If I know what you're focused on, I can help you with that. So, I quite often say the more I know about you and your situation, the better chance I have of helping. But um, again, it's been a little interesting. The phone's been ringing a little more often towards the end of the year,
Yeah.
and a lot of people assume it's the market. Not necessarily. There are things that happen in somebody's life. They've changed
Mm.
jobs. They are older and need to take money out of their IRA. Again, uh, it gets a little easier over time. Businesses are cyclical. The market is cyclical. So uh, after having 20 years of doing something very similar, it's easier to be able to anticipate what the needs are, but um, I enjoy what I do. So if I'm helpful and add a little value, then it's a worthwhile endeavor on my part as far as being part of that relationship. Most people appreciate a little advice, and certainly a second opinion is not a bad thing to
And
get
you
right now.
you joined Edward Jones in 1998. So this time of year, there's a lot of deadlines to meet for money with different things to do. So I imagine you are getting this gets a lot of the phone ringing for a number of different reasons, correct?
Right. Well, there are some people that need to fund their retirement account before the end of the
Mm.
year if they're business owners. Also, people are taking money out of their retirement accounts because of an annual requirement. It's called a required minimum distribution. But in a year like this, where there have been some changes, where
Mm.
the market has changed, there are folks that are going to get a tax bill for owning something that they didn't sell. So we've been interacting a lot with the tax professionals. I'm not a CPA, but I can see a red flag when I see one. It's like, ooh, this is something that's could be significant in your picture. So it's something we've been talking about at the end of the year. So
Okay, and we'll get into that more. We won't get into any recommendations or anything like that, but just talk strategies and what people should be thinking about, and we talk about this on the show all the time. In BNI, finances and health are the two hardest things to refer because you can't really walk up to somebody and go, "Dude, you look loaded. You need to talk to my guy Jim." So yours are long lead time introduction, but it truly is like know and trust if somebody's going to give their money to you.
well, if you're an advisor, then usually it's something that has created some angst or pain,
Mhm.
or they have questions. And if I can provide a solution, and sometimes it's not me, they need a roofer, they need an
Okay.
attorney,
Yep.
they need someone else that I can say, let me make a phone call for you. I know someone that can look at this with you, and uh, then I become part of the solution. So it's not that I'm smarter than everybody else in the room. I'm not. We just joked about that. But um, we know some good folks that are good at being able to solve problems. So usually, if there's a problem, it's more finite, it's something that we can help them with. And I want them to make good choices. So if you know what the choices are, sometimes it's A, B, or C. A lot of times they don't have the information on the other two. So again, it's interesting to be able to be an advisor because a tax professional or attorney doesn't sit and tell you everything they know. Someone has a question, you go, that's a great question. Here's some information. This is what I would look at if I were you. This is where we need to spend our time. So it's an interesting way to be able to help families with their
Yeah.
finances. But you can imagine the people that are driving the beat up old trucks and live in one-story houses where the trees are taller than the house usually have more money. The house is paid for, and they're thinking about them. Are they going to run out of money, or is this going to go to my kids the best way that I want it to? Or I'm worried about my kids.
Yeah.
I want to make sure my kids are getting good advice.
Or they have grandkids along the way. So, yeah, and we'll talk
Well,
about
I'm
that
not
too.
that I'm
Not
not there
yet.
with you, but
It's a blast. It's a great group to be in. So,
congratulations
well,
again on a grandson.
well, I
So,
thank you very
yeah.
much. Each week at a BNI chapter, there's a featured speaker, and depending on how big the chapter is, it's either 5 or 10 minutes long. And each week, the speaker is introduced with the BNI member bio sheet. So this is how we introduce everybody each week. So we're going to go with this. Jim Bowdish, Edward Jones Financial, an advisor. That really is a key word. And a lot of times, now that you've said that a couple times, people don't add that on. They just say Edward Jones, and you really are an advisor.
That's right.
I mean, you can
So,
do a lot of things,
right.
but you're an advisor.
Well, and stocks, bonds, mutual funds are just tools people use to save
Yeah.
with. But again, if they know what they can do, they usually make a better educated decision moving forward. So,
And the location of your office is just down the road here.
right, it's a Centerview Drive right here in Raleigh and 27606. So,
All right.
West Raleigh, which was a holdout for years, but this wasn't part of the city, kind of like the neighborhood we grew
Way
up
back
in
when.
North Raleigh that wasn't part of the city.
We have some way back stories for the next hour or so. Hang on and listen. Those will be good. So my second favorite question on this bio sheet is favorite or previous types of jobs, but I get more entertained hearing the high school and early college jobs. So
All right.
I know there's a good story here on one of those.
um, so waiting table at the Angus barn. Literally, I would carry trays with food that weighed more than I did, but um, that was also an interesting opportunity to be a good listener. And again, um, some great stories at the Angus barn is still one of our favorite places to go. So, uh, if Susan and I have a chance to be able to celebrate something, especially with a couple of other couples, the Angus barn's one of my favorite places to go. But now it wasn't the first place I worked. Do you remember your first job?
Oh, I do. It was on Capitol at Brentwood. It was Roy Rogers Barbecue.
Oh, the double R bar burger
Oh,
and a holster
man.
of French fries.
He
So,
would get I asked somebody one day, and this was back in '77, I think. And I was told that Roy Rogers got $300 a month from every store, and at the time, there were 330 stores nationwide just to use his name. And the barbecue was good.
yeah.
I liked it. So, and your first job?
So my first job was washing dishes at Lock, Stock, and Barrel in
Oh,
North Raleigh.
yes.
Now, I wasn't 16, so I had to have my folks drive me. And my last day of working, washing dishes, literally the cooks would take all of their stuff. I'd wash all the dishes, and then all their stuff would get dumped for me to wash. Well, 11:30, 12 o'clock at night on a weeknight, my dad shows up to pick me up. And I said, Dad, I can't leave yet. I still have all this stuff to wash. And he said, Son, he said, back then you were on a work permit. You couldn't work past
Oh,
certain
yeah.
hours when you were younger. So Dad kind of looked. He said, I'll be back in a second. He walked to the manager and announced that I no longer work there and make sure they mail the check. But who's going to wash these dishes? And he goes, I guess you could call one of the cooks, or maybe you could wash it yourself. So it's kind of short lived. But again, those are some of those humbling things when just to learn an opportunity to be able to work somewhere. Sometimes you're appreciated,
Yeah.
sometimes you're not. And that makes you focus on what you do want to do later on. But
A lot of times, the best thing to do is eliminate things that
Well,
you don't want to
and
do.
if you're really honest, as far as especially teenagers, if you look back at that first paycheck
Oh,
and go, FICA, who's FICA? They got half my check. And it's like, anyway, so you got to
and we
start
still thought we
somewhere.
were loaded at
That's
that point
right.
at
That's
15
right.
and 16. So,
Well,
personal information. You just mentioned Susan, your spouse.
Right.
17. How many years?
so 20.
20. Okay.
So
Right.
you said 1998. Susan and I both changed jobs and got married in the same year. Talk about throwing a little stress
Mhm.
into the dynamic, but it was absolutely the right thing to do. But literally, we both found opportunities other places. The good news was we found each other. So we are not perfect, but we're perfect for each other. But we just celebrated our 20th in June. So
Congratulations. I
yeah.
always like to ask couples, how did you meet, and do both of you tell the story the same way?
No, because mine's part of the witness protection program. So no. Um, so interesting story as far as Susan and I are a little different in age. Again, I went off to go to school right after graduation, went to East Carolina University to wrestle.
Mhm.
And they canceled the minor sports programs that fall of 79. So swimming and diving, wrestling, women's field hockey, all cut. ECU was an independent back then,
Oh,
weren't
that's
part
right,
of a
yeah.
conference. So I got a little help along the way. My first question was, wait a minute, what about this grant money? What about this scholarship stuff? So that's fine. So I majored in fraternity for about 2 years. Um, and then really, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. So I joined the Navy. I went
Mhm.
to the Navy, grew up a little bit. And then when I went back to school, I met Susan. Now, Susan was a traditional freshman. I was not. I was older, maybe a little wiser, but we did not date when we were an undergrad. Matter of fact, it was almost 10 years later when
Isn't
we
that funny? Yeah.
reconnected and then got married. So um, we were always friends. A lot of our friends were getting married, so both of us needed wedding dates one
There you
summer,
go.
and literally we just had a lot of time, a lot of fun spending time with each other. And I think it was just that little nudge as far as, hey, this is the one I want to be with forever.
Very
So
good.
very good.
Children?
Yes, 3
Yes.
teenagers.
Oh.
So you
Uh-huh.
I applaud you for grandparents. I think we've got a couple years, but, Abby is 19, just finished her freshman year at UNC and doing great. So she wants to study epidemiology. I didn't know what that was, so I Googled it,
Yeah.
but she's, really focused on what she wants to do. And then Betsy is 17, a junior at Athens Drive right down the street, and Jack, our little guy, is, um, a freshman at Athens, and I say little guy, he's 6 inches taller than me, but he's a good kid. So,
Animals?
um, now here's funny, I'm allergic to dogs. Guess how many
Mm,
dogs we have?
4.
2. But we have the poodle schnauzer mixes that are supposed to be hyperallergenic.
Mm.
Betsy's allergic to dogs. One sleeps with her, but they're a lot of fun. So we actually got a puppy for our kids for Christmas one year, and why we even got another present, I don't know. But it's when the kids were little. So Buster's 9 now. Um, but Santa brought a puppy, and that
Yeah.
was yep. So
Game
we're
on,
all in.
right?
So
Yeah.
a lot of fun. So.
Hobbies and activities of interest?
On the BNI stuff, I used to put down the Disney Channel, antiquing,
Barney.
but, so now it's more golf. So I have a little bit of time to be able to play a little golf. Love baseball, help
Mhm.
coach my kids', baseball teams, but at this point now, Jack's moving up. He has real coaches actually leading the team. Um, but the idea of being able to do some stuff that we both enjoy, but, Susan and I still like to snow ski, and of all things, Abby is going skiing next week.
Mhm.
She took PE, whatever, took skiing for PE. So
Beautiful.
part of the class is she gets to go skiing for a week, and anyway, I wanna go back to college, so anyway,
Now that we know what we know, right?
that's right, that's right.
City of residence, Raleigh since 70. I think you and I both moved here about the same time, 74?
Right,
Yeah.
74. So my dad worked for a company out in RTP, and the year that we moved, there was a huge influx from both IBM and
Mhm.
Burroughs Wellcome. So when you walked into school, the kids would ask, "Who does your dad work for? Is it IBM or Burroughs Wellcome?" Matter of fact, if you remember Kelly McConnell,
Mhm.
that we graduated with, she laughed and she said, "Well, my mom works for Burroughs Wellcome." And I can remember the kids going, "Your mom works?
Yeah. Oh,
Really?"
yeah.
So there were a lot of professionals that came into the Triangle area in that time frame, but, it it was a little different back then, but you know what? Raleigh's still a small
Mhm.
feeling
Yeah,
city, so
yeah.
but
And Jim and I both moved here in 74, grew up together in Fairfax Hills, so shout out to
the old
anybody who's got ties
neighborhood.
to Fairfax Hills. It's a great place to grow up. There was a pool in the back of the neighborhood. There was 2 and 3 of everything you wanted to do. We could play tennis, we could swim, we could play basketball at night, we could hang out at somebody's house, played flag football games everywhere, snowball fights everywhere, so we had a blast growing up there.
Volleyball on Sunday night, you
Oh,
remember
that's
that?
right, yeah,
Everybody in the neighborhood showed
yeah.
up to play volleyball, and not everybody played, but a lot of people just hung out and visited. But matter of fact, the neighborhood that we moved to, uh, 12 years ago, literally a very similar neighborhood with a neighborhood pool. It's a 4-lane pool with a swim
4
team,
lane.
same kind of feel.
Yeah.
So,
That's a
makes
great
it
place to grow up. I
yeah.
still have great memories of that on Ivy Lane, so loved it. Your burning desire is to.
You know what? I would love to hike the Appalachian Trail. Now, not all at one
Oh,
time,
okay. Alright.
but again, that's something I've actually got a buddy from church that, literally mentioned the same thing, and it's not that we need time away from our kids or our families, although now would be ideal with
Mhm.
3 teenagers,
Teenagers,
I
yeah.
no, but, love the mountains, love the opportunity to be able to go and do something and see different parts of the country, but, um, I think it'd be a huge time constraint, so it'd be a matter of just carving out a week a year
Yeah.
to be able to do something, so now Susan and I have talked about it, our gang goes on a mission trip during the summer, and I say our gang. Susan goes with the kids. Um, because they go to some areas where there are lots of dogs, no air conditioning, probably certainly different from what you and I grew up
Mhm.
in. So um, I'm limited in my ability to be able to do that. They're going under houses, they're working in environments that
Well, good for
me with
them.
allergies and asthma, I
Mhm.
wouldn't last very long. So we had even said if she goes with the kids and goes on a mission trip,
That
that might be the week that
yeah.
a couple of us go. And of course, we can start in North Carolina and
Oh,
head both ways.
take you on,
But
yeah. Oh, that would be
anyway,
fun.
so
Key to your success is?
being presently, I guess, being pleasantly persistent.
Okay.
No doesn't mean no today. And you mentioned folks in finances. If I were to be referred to someone, they go, "Hey, I'm fine." They kind of do the Heisman and say, "I'm good." But if I continue to follow back up and say,
Mhm.
"How did that work for you? What
Mm.
did you? You know what? I haven't done anything yet." Then there might be a chance where I say, "Oh, you know what? If I'm not the person you want to help, sounds like you still need to fix a
Mm.
problem. Maybe you talk to this person." And that's
Mm.
where BNI helps.
Yeah.
But
No, I agree. I have those referral partners. You may not, like I said earlier, you may not end up with a business, but you can send them in the right direction, which
right,
makes you the hero because
right,
they'll remember
right.
that. And a couple years down the road, they'll go, I'm called Jim back. I need to now something has
When
changed and they may or may not call you back, but they'll remember you.
right. And with BNI, clients think I know everybody, and I don't. I don't know
Mm.
everybody, but I know a good group of people very well that can solve problems. So I think that's what BNI has been as far as my ability to be able to help or
Yeah.
be helpful. But
And best question on here is something no one knows about you. And I know what
right.
story I want you to tell because I read it the other day, but I'm gonna see if you tell it. Then I'm gonna ask you to tell that one. So
All right. Um, in undergrad, I enjoyed taking the business classes that I took, but as an elective, I took an upper level English class. One, I love the professor. I had her in a freshman or a sophomore year. She was teaching an advanced class, so it's me and all these English majors. And we were given a task to write a paper. So it was back in the 1800s with the British and the Eastern Indians and just a whole
okay.
lot going on. So I did a lot of research. It was an excellent paper, if I may say so. It was one that I really got excited about, and I think she sensed that. Some others were just going through the motions and doing some research, but at awards when we graduated, literally, I got the English award, and I could still feel the barbs in the back of my head from some of these English majors going, "Wait a minute, I was a business major that got an English award
I
undergrad." So,
thought the story was gonna be you took the class because Susan was in it. That's the only reason you want to have a class with her, but this is a good story too,
oh
so
yeah, yep.
the story I wanted you to tell that I read was about your Boy Scout uniform
All right.
with
So,
Jack.
well, I mentioned being little, and um, matter of fact, as far as it's funny, Abby's getting ready to go skiing, and she's actually wearing a pair of ski pants that she could wear in seventh grade. She's little like I am. She's 5 feet, tiny. Um, but with Jack, he's grown a little faster. So, and I think he was 7. Halloween, he wore my Boy Scout uniform, not my Cub Scout uniform, and it fit. He was 7. And I was thinking back, 'cause I was like 12 or 13 when I was wearing a Boy Scout uniform. But, literally, it was one of those things that, and of course, your kids and your stuff. All right, now be careful. The
Yeah.
first thing that happened, he's running from house to house. The slide on the handkerchief slid off.
Oh,
He
no.
loses the handkerchief, and it wasn't like it was it was a handmade leather, arrowhead
Oh.
that slid to hold the neckerchief on.
Yeah,
Well, of course, that comes off, he's running.
yeah.
So we found the neckerchief, and the next day, I found the slide, but you know what? He was running around, he's 7, what does he know?
It's like, "Dad, look at all the candy I got."
Candy, he scored chocolate, so, yeah, but
I like that story. So the beauty of BNI, and we talk about this every week, is the people you get to know, even visiting other chapters. And Jim and I have known each other a long time. I would have come to him anyways on this. But I'd had this thought for this show for 2 years, trying to figure out how to get it done. I didn't know anybody on the production side of it. I knew I could get guests through BNI, not a problem. Content wasn't going to be the problem, but I had no contact on the production side. Talked to a couple of radio stations. They wanted a lot of money for a time buy, and I didn't have a lot of money to do that. And I was meeting with Jim one day. One of the best things you can do in BNI is have a one-to-one where you get to know the person because you have to know, like, and trust them before you can refer people to them, which makes sense. And I told Jim, said, Jim, this is what I'm trying to do. I need some help. And he goes, call Amnon. Like, who's Amnon? He goes, just call Amnon. He wrote down his number and I called Amnon. And Amnon Nissan produces all these shows at Nissan Communications. So you're on the website here. And it was a wonderful introduction. I came to Amnon, told him what I wanted to do. He sent me away with some homework. I got all that straight, got with Steve Hand at BNI, and this is show number 21 now.
right,
And that's the beauty of how BNI works because I went to Jim to talk about all kinds of other things.
right,
But I
right,
knew that Jim had been in this town longer than I had because I moved away for 30 years and he didn't. And as soon as I said it, the only thing he told me was call Amnon. And here's where we are today. So that's the beauty of it. And I thank Jim for this. And I tell people the story all the time. Jim said, go to Amnon. Both of them knew what the heck they were talking about. And I'm the beneficiary of all that.
right,
So I win. But that's the beauty of BNI is just talking to people. Because like Jim said earlier, he doesn't know everything, but he knows people
that's right.
who to send them to. So that's how all this got started because I went to somebody who knew somebody and it all worked out. So
Well, good.
yeah,
You didn't bring a referral.
not to Jim. No, I'm still trying to make a lot of money, trying to, yeah,
No, no, no,
trying to
so
make some money on this, and send some money to Jim. But,
you
so
know what? And in that conversation, I can remember because the way you asked the question, it was who I knew in broadcasting.
yeah,
Because thinking of going back into broadcasting for what you had done before. So if you remember, it was like, well, I know a guy at Capital Broadcasting. He's actually the voice of the Durham
hmm
Bulls. I
yeah,
can make that
you did.
introduction. So he goes, well, so we talked through that a little bit. And then when you said the idea of a show, I went, oh, wait a minute. I mean, literally 2 blocks from my
Yeah,
office is a guy. And he said, what do you mean a guy? I said, I know the guy. And Amnon is
yeah.
a good problem solver.
Oh,
So
yeah, it
yeah,
worked out
so
great, but that's the beauty of just going to a friend and asking, especially somebody that's been in here in the town a long time. But with BNI as well, it's the same thing. Hey, here's a goal I'm trying to accomplish. Do you know anybody that can help? And you may not be able to be the right person for it, but you know somebody that does because everybody in BNI, it's seat specific. So I know a person is a great tagline that people have in BNI. So I want everybody to know how the show got started because I'm eternally grateful to both of these guys because I've been trying to do this for a long time. And my brother and I have 2 businesses and he's the brains behind it. He loves payroll and taxes and all that stuff. And I just want to talk all day.
well, good.
And our mom used to
Good.
die laughing thinking she had 2 boys. We could not be more different. So this is a labor of love for me, and we're glad to have Jim on the show because I want everybody to know how that got started. Okay, we always ask the folks on the show, literally, the first time you ever heard BN.
All right. I think we had jotted down a couple of notes, or at least I did. But when I started with Edward Jones in 1998, leads group were a big deal. You had to get into a leads group. And the one that I was introduced to was not BNI, and it was not a networking referral powerhouse. It was a bunch of IT people that were trying to find money in motion back in 1998, 1999. if you remember the big influx into IT, but they wanted an attorney and a financial advisor to actually give them some credibility. We invited a banker, and that was a group that sometimes it met on Tuesdays, sometimes it met on Thursdays, sometimes it was the morning, sometimes it was just what was convenient, but it wasn't very intentional. So I had joined the chamber. I was a member of the
Mhm.
chamber. Again, some of those things. So I was visible, but I wasn't really part of anything. So I get a call from a CPA that I had been referring to. And again, I'm not an accountant, but I can see some angst in some people's eyes going,
You've
I
seen
think this
enough.
is where you should probably talk to an accountant. So a guy named Mark Gilfillan, CPA in Cary, he grew up in Cary when it was a one light town. I mean, literally,
And for
Mark's been around for a
And
while.
for
So
those of you that are new to Raleigh, and when I say new, the last 10 or 12 years, back in the mid 70s, driving to Cary from North Raleigh, we may as well have been driving to Charlotte because there was no 540. There's barely the belt line, and we would play tennis or swim at Kildare Farms. Again, you may as well have been driving to Charlotte. It was that far away. Now people live in one place and commute to the other. So,
well, and we've got a belt line and some of that, and but Raleigh is unique where it's still segmented, if you think of it
mhm,
that way. People live in their bubble. If you live in North Raleigh, then you shop in North Raleigh, you go to school in North Raleigh again, and you say, "Oh, well, you need to go to Crossroads." Oh, that's way down. And if you and I go laugh as far as our parents would not drive on that belt line. There's a beltway that goes around Raleigh, and it was a 4-lane road, and they wouldn't get on that.
yeah.
They
Oh,
they
yeah.
would avoid that like the plague.
Mhm.
So, but when I got invited to a lunch meeting, and I said, "Well, what is it? Tell me about it." "Oh, it's a good group of guys." And I said, "Guys?" "Well, guys and gals. We spend about an hour and we talk about our businesses." So I ride along, but it was a lunch bunch. It's you had to leave the office at 11:30, get there at 12, stay for an hour. Then people talk. Usually it was 2 o'clock when we got back. And on a Friday, it's a big commitment at that point. Now, the thing that I remember, there were 2 Eeyores in that group.
Uh,
They complained about everything. They
yeah.
complained about the food, the service. It was too hot. It was too cold. Like, wow.
Yeah.
So I didn't jump on board right away. Matter of fact, I really wasn't interested in a lunch bunch that was really more interested in going and getting something to eat than actually helping each other. So when I found out a little bit more about BNI, I talked to Mark, and Mark goes, "Matter of fact, we're talking about some of the people going to a morning group and some people staying at lunch." Well, a couple of the people that were not the warm and fuzzies
Mhm.
stayed at lunch. And I say, and the good people like me
Beautiful.
started a morning group. And literally, it was an invitation to find out a little bit more about somebody else's business. People weren't there to find out what I did, they wanted to know who I knew.
Mm,
And BNI was one of those unique situations where I can remember having someone say, "Wow, if only I knew X."
yes.
I was like, "Well, they were at that they were at that meeting." So I would go back and go, "You know what? I don't know if you can help or not, but is this what you're looking for?" And they go, "Nope, nope, that's not what I do." But now, more interestingly, as far as I asked Mark, "Why didn't you already have a financial advisor in the group?" And he goes, "Jim, we need to kind of talk on offline about that." So there was a person in the group that was with another firm, Wells Fargo, that
Mm,
literally told the folks at BNI, said, "Look, if you don't have $1 million, I'm not talking to them."
yeah.
And like we said, finances are one of those that are kind of unique. So when it came time for them to be renewed, they did not. And so the seat was opened up. They were inviting other financial advisors. And uh, I guess I learned early it was more about giving than getting.
Mhm.
So, which is unique to BNI. If you're not familiar with BNI, if you join a group right away, don't expect business from day one because a lot of that trust is built from the relationships that you have with those members. So, and quite often, if you can solve a problem for someone else with a referral, then again, it's helpful to be able to know more than just your own group. But uh, so.
And we talk about this all the time, givers gain, and the like, know, and trust, and especially when it comes to finances. But you're talking about, and you've mentioned this a couple times, a good segue into a story that you tell. You were at a baseball game,
Right,
and just by listening,
right.
whether they're talking to you or not,
Right.
right?
Well, so this is one of those where you have to air your laundry, but actually, at one of my son's baseball practices. Now, I coached, it was youth baseball, but I played church league softball, tripped over the first baseman, and broke my collarbone. So here I am with joking around with the sick, lame, and lazies over in the bleachers. Now, it was me and another mom sitting because a lot of the other dads were helping with the
Yeah.
practice. So I'm sitting there. I was like, you know what? I knew the husband, I knew the kid's name, but I hear this phone call. And I mean, she is crying, trying to get somebody to come fix something at her house. So whoever she was talking to couldn't be there for like 3 weeks. And so she hangs up, she calls somebody else. Now I'm sitting there checking my phone. I got nothing better to do. It's like, up. And then she gets off the phone, leaving a message for someone else. And I said, all right, I got to ask, what's going on? She goes, well, we're having a party at my house this weekend, and I've got a light fixture and I've got this stuff that needs to be fixed. My husband's going out of town right after practice, so he can't do it. And I just need somebody to fix it. So, no, I didn't say, hey, I got a toolbox. I can do that. That's not my thing. But I said, can I make a phone call? So, literally, go to my phone, pick up a number, and I call Mike Ferraro with Allguard Home Improvements. Speed dial. He's one of my BNI guys. Said, hey, Mike, what are you doing? He goes, well, I'm kind of goofing off. Think I'm going to head to the beach. And I said, wait a minute.
Mhm.
I said, can you talk to somebody? And he goes, what? I said, look, I'm sitting at the baseball field. Lady lives over in McGregor. She needs a little bit of work. I think it's pretty simple, but she needs somebody to do something. So hang on just a second. Now, literally, I lean over and I go, what's your name again? Oh, Michelle. That's right, Michelle. All right, so I got Michelle on the phone. I'm going to hand her the phone. So they talk. And she explains a little bit about I need a couple of things. And he goes, well, can I come this afternoon? She goes, oh, that would be
Oh,
great. So um, he goes over, does a little bit of work. The party goes off without a hitch. And then she calls him back and says, you know, you did such a great job. We need help with the bathroom. The people that had done the work before literally left some stuff undone. Never happens in our world. And he fixed a couple of other things. Well, she played tennis over in
mm,
McGregor, you know,
gold
folks that
mine,
are,
yep.
so all of a sudden she goes, oh, who did your work? Who did your work? So all of a sudden I've got somebody that I know that was really kind of in a downtime, didn't really have a whole lot going on, got buried with work to do. And when she said, well, how did you find this guy? Well, Jim, he's with Edward Jones. You don't know Jim? Oh, wait, here's his card. And um, again, it was an introduction to kind of go, you know what? I think I know somebody that might be
Yeah.
able to help, but it only because I'd broken my collarbone. I'm sitting in timeout with, you know, somebody else watching the practice. And I heard something that I was like, you know what?
Yeah.
Maybe that's something I might be able to help with. But, um,
And that's
you
one of
know,
the great things that I learned about BNI when I joined. It just teaches you to listen different. Before I joined BNI, I didn't know a carpet cleaner. I didn't know a roof person and some other seats that are in my chapter. And once I joined BNI, I got to know those people. Now when I walk into a place or I walk into a house, somebody goes, "Oh, excuse the carpet, the dog, X, Y," that with 2 dogs. And like, "Well, I've got someone, if you ever need that, let me know. I've got a great person that can help you with that." And it just teaches you to listen different because now you have a solution to the problem. You walk into a doctor's office or a store, whatever, and they're just pounding on the keyboard. I got somebody that can help you with that now. But
that's
it
right.
truly teaches you to listen different.
Um, and it's interesting what you hear because quite often, or you can remember as far as just if someone has a great experience at a restaurant with good food, they go, oh, we had a good meal the other night. But by golly, if you have a bad experience,
So,
and now with the internet, oh my gosh, let me write a blog about
yeah.
it. I'm going to tell everybody how horrible it was. And sometimes you go, wow, you know, I think you just have the wrong person. If you want someone that might be able to fix that for you,
Yeah.
here's someone that I can introduce you to. Now, it not just say, hey, here's their phone number.
Mhm.
It's that example of literally get them on the phone and go, hey, Michelle, here's the phone. Talk to Mike. This really? Yeah. So, um,
And that made
Mm.
that and we talk about all the time, the difference between BNI and a leads group is Michelle was a qualified referral because she had a need and she gave you permission to call your guy to talk to him. And that's the beauty of BNI. Instead of Jim's going, yeah, I'll have my guy call you if you really need something. And you never know if that's going to happen. But that
Right.
qualified referral, she needed something and you had the answer. So
Well, and the other thing that I can remember, and we joke around about this in our group, if you come to Triangle Business Connections on Thursday and introduce yourself and say you're full service, you get to
true.
buy coffee for everybody. And I say that because I don't need a bunch of people that are full service. It's, you know what, right now I'm able to help people with this, or this is what I'm working on, and help with us with some focus. So, um, matter of fact, laugh about that original group as far as the one seat hog. There was a person
Yeah.
that was an insurance professional and he was full service. He did it all. It was life, it was home, it was auto. He did business
Mhm.
insurance.
Health insurance probably too back then, right?
So, and I said, so it was called a seat hog. He didn't want any other insurance professionals even visiting the group. He was president of that group. I think it was 10 members. He decided he was going to do something else, moved on. That group opened up that insurance seat, but it brought in 6 new members because we had an Aflac member join. We had a guy that did property casualty. We had a commercial insurance guy join. Um, we had a business insurance that does just on the commercial side, but like liability
Yeah.
type stuff. So it opened up all these opportunities to say, why is that a big deal? Well, if they're talking to 20 to 30 people a day because of what they do, don't you think they're going to hear somebody say, oh, and by the way, boy, I need to get a new fence. Do you know a fence guy? Or do you need a carpet cleaner? Or, boy, I need this. Those are the antennas. So if you have 5 people listening on behalf of the group, and I think that group went from 10 to
Quickly.
35
Oh, quickly, I
quickly.
bet, yeah.
Yep. So,
One of the things we talk about in BNI is each person rule of thumb is each person in a BNI chapter knows 250 people. So, again, it's a math problem right there. You add
right.
6, okay, that's 1,500 people you now could potentially be connected to because you do this, and they
Right.
join the
Right.
chapter, so
And we were also fortunate as far as having like 3 attorneys, not just an
mhm.
attorney, but 3. One was a business attorney, one was a real estate attorney, and the other one did estates and wills. There are times when folks need help in those areas, but attorneys are not full service.
No.
They usually have a specific focus. So I can remember over time, of course, the membership changes and people get confused about that. Our estate planning attorney got married. His wife was from Greensboro. She was connected with a law firm in Greensboro. She wanted to move closer to home. So she moved an hour and a half away. That opened up the seat for someone else to join BNI. This last week, we had a person, she applied. She's a family attorney, handling divorces,
Mm,
separations, some of that kind of stuff. So, again, I think it'll be an interesting addition to our group
yes.
because it's bringing a different dynamic. But kinda interesting what you hear on
Yes.
occasion, so
Well, and you had
around the
mentioned
water
oh,
coolers,
yeah,
yeah.
and you had mentioned earlier, you have to be upfront with everybody in your chapter about what you don't do. As a pest control person, they tell me, "Oh, do you remove varmints and critters from my attic?" I'm like, "No," and I'll tell you why. There's not enough zeros in your bank account for me to go chase a rabid raccoon
Right,
in the
right,
attic, but I know people that do.
right, right.
Thank you for offering that to me first. I don't do that. And you're right, you can't be you on paper, you could be full service, but that just means you're not gonna do something really
Well,
good.
and that's our company. I mean, with Edward Jones, if I only wanted to help clients buy and sell stock, and it was an ethical, profitable office, I could do that. For BNI, I go once a week to help business owners understand what they can do in the retirement plan world, what they can do to set up a
Mm,
retirement plan. And I joke around about putting some hay in the barn. It's for later. So one of our members is a payroll accountant. She's got one of the sharpest pencils in Wake County. But Lori hears about business owners all the time that need to save for retirement. And it's not, well, here's 5 cards, but she says, you need to call Jim. And a lot of times I go, this is what you need to learn, or this is how you need to get smart. But How much do you want to do? Who are you trying to help? Who are you trying to focus? So for BNI, I focus on small business retirement plans. There are other things that I can help with, but it's very intentional and very specific when I visit BNI chapters because I could have someone else in that chapter that does what I do, meaning they're a financial advisor, but they don't do very much with retirement plans. So that may be a way to
Yeah.
complement their business. But again, it's not going in and stepping on toes. Quite often, if I visit another BNI chapter, I'm going to say, by the way, our newest member is a family attorney. You don't have one in this group. You need to come
Yes.
visit us on Thursday and connect with her. You may never have a family attorney join your group, but by golly, there's another BNI member that's getting up to speed.
Yeah.
And again, I'd love for you to be able to meet Lily. Come and meet with her on Thursday. So,
And there are a lot
uh,
of us in BNI that our seat is very specific, and people only call us when you have a problem: pest control, carpet cleaning, realtor, you're getting ready to move, buy or sell. But with finance, it's difficult because you may not know you need something, or you may not have thought, like being a new grandfather. I'm like, okay, well, I'm trying to set up a plan for my grandson, something that I'm trying to figure out if the rules will allow me to hold it till he's 30 and he can't do any knucklehead things with the money like right out of college. But I don't know if
well,
the language exists in that yet,
we
but I'm,
should
I'm
talk
learning.
about
We
that
should.
offline. But, and
Yes.
people ask that. So, again, if you know that you could set something up in a child's account, in the child's name, the question has to be, is this for education only?
Yes.
Or do you want them to buy a house with it later?
The only two
Anything
things
like
I
that?
talked about: pay off your
Right.
loan or buy a house. No knucklehead stuff, no cars, no traveling Europe,
Well, and it's easy to
especially if
say,
I'm still living
well,
and
and
I
they say,
find
well,
out.
why is that a big deal? And so let's say you don't put in an education only and they go off to school, major in fraternity, do something else. They join the Marines, they get kicked out of the Marines, and then they join the Hells Angels
Yeah.
and want to buy a motorcycle with the money that you gave them for a down payment. If it's set up one way, it becomes theirs, no questions asked. They get to spend the money, you don't get a vote. If it's education only, that allows the owner to change and the custodian to
Yeah.
change. So if you're trying to say, hey, more of a legacy plan, I want my grandkids collectively to be educated. If your grandson now, 18 years from now, gets a scholarship and never needs that money, it can go to the next one in line. Or heaven forbid, you go
Yeah.
back to school, you could use the money. So it's always asking, where did the money come from to
Yeah.
fund this? And what do you want it to do? So
And
those are all good
I've
questions to
told
ask.
both of my boys, now that I have one grandchild, I'm gonna need some more because it's a lot of fun, especially when
Right.
they live close enough. They're in Charlotte, so it's a lot of fun. I highly recommend, when appropriate, joining the grandparents club. So back to referrals. Again, it's easy to refer people to these type seats, but we don't always know from a financial side or an advisor who your best referral would be. And I know you have a good story about a family
Right.
on
Right.
one referral, but just what are we listening for?
Well, if you pay attention, you review regularly and you solve some problems. And I build a lot of three-legged stools. I build tricycles. Think of it that way, where if there are three legs on a stool and you have balance in that plan, it's pretty stable. If one of the legs gets longer than the other one or shorter than the other one, as we've seen with the market recently, you need to make some adjustments. But if over time you create a relationship with that person, and a lot of times these are for clients, and regardless of what you do, it's very hard to fire your friends. It's very easy to fire an agent. So if all they do is place one policy or one book of business with you, and you haven't heard from them in 20 years, quite often for my farm bureau agent, Jason Joyner in my group, is one of the best dads. His daughters, one is a gymnast and one plays softball. But notoriously, I can sit and go, all right, Mike, now if I'm helping, the more I know about you, the better chance I have of helping. Who does your taxes? Who did your will? Do you have a retirement plan at work? Do you have some of those things? Trying to paint a picture and say, when was the last time that was reviewed? Oh my gosh, this has never
Yeah.
been reviewed. Really?
Yeah.
Well, you know what? We're going to get back to that, but I have someone that I think you ought to talk to to review that. But Jason hears from folks all the time. If I'm reviewing something and I can't help with the property casualty insurance, but I'll say, "Who's your agent?" "Oh, it's the general
Yeah.
or Geico or something." I was like, if you want a second opinion, you want someone to look at that, I know someone that can review that with you, not for you,
Mhm.
but with you. Again, that's just
'Cause it
part of
changes, right?
right, right.
Families change, you kid yeah,
So
all this stuff. But you had a good story you're gonna tell about one family led to 26.
26 different relationships.
We like those stories.
Um, so, and to be confidential, as far as again, there was a lady that lived close to my office that I had met the husband. I had not met the wife at the house, but I kept meeting this gentleman and he kept saying, "You need to go see the guy across the street. He's got more money than I do." I'd go see the guy across
That's
just to
nice to hear
introduce.
for an advisor,
Well,
isn't
and I
it?
laugh and he said, "No, no, no, you need to go. Matter of fact, you need to go see them." But so back and forth over maybe a 6 weeks process. Um, I follow back up with a couple now because the lady is out in the yard. And I go, "Oh my gosh, I know her." And she goes, "Jim Bowdish, what are you doing in my backyard?" And I said, "Oh, I had no idea. I wasn't putting the dots together that husband and wife, and I knew the wife." So she says, "Come in, let's have some cake and some iced tea," and visited for a little bit. And I asked her what were some things that if they could change something, what would they change? And the first thing that came up was a company, John Hancock. They hated him. And I said, "Really? Well, tell me what's good about him if you could change something." And I think most of their family had John Hancock policies, all sold with one kid, his first job out of college. They'd not heard from him in probably 10 or 15 years. When they tried to follow up, he left the company 12 or 13 years ago. So it was one of those that just wasn't somebody to watch them. Now, it wasn't significant. It wasn't a huge amount of money, but it was, well, tell me why you have it. What's it for? That kind of thing. And then it was just a matter of 8 children and 8 children having grandkids. Again, as far as so great grandma referred me to her children, her adult children, or their adult children, and then their uh, children. But it was also other people that they knew. So, but in that immediate
Yeah.
family, it was 26 different relationships. So,
And again, part of BNI, what we talk about is people, they have your phone number. And with Edward Jones, but it almost doesn't matter. It's like my money's with Jim.
right,
And
right,
that's the beauty of BNI because you meet these people, they're local, they have your best interest at heart. You can call them, you've got your cell phone number. Very few of us like being the customer where you dial the 800 number and then you have a 16 number pin that you got to punch in, and then you're talking to somebody who knows where. And it through no fault of theirs, you are not a sense of urgency for them. You're just another call. Hey, it's 1 o'clock.
right,
I get off
right.
at 5 and all that. But through BNI, you meet these local people like Jim. You have their number. You can go call them. You can talk to them for 6 months, a year and a half before you decide to do anything.
That's right.
Because as an advisor, so that's why we recommend BNI so much. You can give them a call. Give them a call at the office at 919-465-1667. You can talk to Steve or Mary or Brenda. They'll be more than happy to help you out. TriangleBNI.com. Also, you can go there and click on Find a Chapter. Look through all the chapters, find out who might be a good resource for you, location, daytime, day, all that good stuff. But that's what we love about BNI. The other thing you're going to find out when you, if and when you join a BNI chapter, the quality of the people in here not only are good at what they do, but they're very involved in the community. They give back. Jim had mentioned earlier a part of Cary Presbyterian Church, but he's also a volunteer with the American Diabetes Association, which I know is near and dear to your heart.
It is. My dad passed away from complications with diabetes, and diabetes is one of those that because of the way that they position it, it doesn't get the credit it deserves. Now you go, what would that mean? People are passing away from renal failure, heart
Mhm.
complications, other things, but diabetes tends to speed some stuff up. So, um, my dad and I both wrestled. I think dad
Mhm.
cut a lot more weight than I did back in the day. But with diabetes, it's a lot of just education. I can remember the Wake County school systems were reluctant to provide diet drinks for kids. So kids that are juvenile diabetics or even kids that just can't have sugar can't get a drink out of the soda machine. And they were reluctant to put diet drinks. So their solution was, well, the kid can just go to the teacher's lounge and get a diet drink. Well, the teachers
I don't
don't
think they
want the kids in the
Yeah.
teacher's lounge, and they were empty because the teachers drank them all.
Yeah.
So, in their infinite wisdom, and Amnon, you'll laugh at this, what do you think they put on the lines for the diabetic children? Apple juice,
No.
orange juice,
Oh.
which is what you give someone when they're having a diabetic low, not, hey, let's see how high we can get his blood sugar in the next 30 minutes. But um, a lot of it is awareness and
It
just
is. Yeah.
understanding. So, and one that more recently got involved with is the Alzheimer's Foundation. So
Mhm.
Edward Jones 2 years ago became the national title sponsor for Alzheimer's and the Alzheimer's Walk. And in all 50 states, we help support walks. Matter of fact, in the Triangle area, just in one day raised over $500,000
Wow.
for Alzheimer's research. And you would wonder, why would we as financial advisors be worried about that? Having been with Edward Jones 20 years and seeing capacity issues change. Mr. and Mrs.
Mhm.
Client, sharp as a tack, and all of a sudden, well, maybe she passes away and he's now more forgetful. And going back to that estate plan, who's going to help if there's a concern? But um, just the Alzheimer's process with both that and dementia, it's
Yeah.
amazing how quickly it can change. But
Yeah.
we have to pay attention to that. So we ask for a trusted contact. If I needed to get in touch with you and couldn't, I'd want you to have someone that I could call to say, hey, I'm trying to get in touch with Mike.
Yeah.
Can you have them call me? I can't talk about their account, what they own, what they need, but I'm just trying to get in touch. That's huge. It allows us to be able to have some connection with a family,
Yeah.
especially if it's to voice a concern about, I've noticed a couple of things that, have you noticed anything different?
Mhm.
No, no, mom's fine. Okay.
Yeah.
You just make a note. But uh, again, that's something that we unfortunately are seeing more of as our clients age and go through some
Yeah.
changes. It's just interesting.
Yeah, and Jim mentioned his dad earlier in the story, and his dad, again, Jim and I grew up together in Fairfax
Now, is
Hills,
this gonna be a clean
1974. Oh, yeah,
story?
it's a clean story. So Jim has
Right.
mentioned a couple times he's not tall, okay? Jim's dad was not tall. Was a Navy wrestler, Popeye forearms, all the spunk you want in anybody. He would stare down anyone. Great storyteller, great pot stirrer, just a fun guy to be around. So we were, I guess, 16, 17 years old in high school, and we're at the pool one summer, and your dad's there, and one of the guys, and I forget who it was, thought he'd just test the old man. And so he
Mm.
walked up to your dad and he'd give him a little grief back, and your dad just kind of sizing him up and everything. And the kid, you talking about his wrestling. And the kid went to do something. I forget what he did, but your dad grabbed his arm and in 2 seconds had his arm in the old move we used to do to guys, put his arm down between his legs and was pulling up.
Right,
And that kid
algebra.
said, Uncle, and your dad could not have laughed harder as he's walking out of that place. But he just, yeah, come on, bring it. And he was
Um,
just he was a good dude. I know a lot of people in town knew him through all the work that he did and with the government and everything, but that story, I'll always remember your dad for that story because that kid thought, "All right, old man, let's see what you got."
well, and I mentioned I went into the Navy, more a chance to grow up. Um, Dad went into the Navy as a wrestler from Iowa. When they found out that they were wrestlers, now this is back in 50, 55, 56. 5 of the guys from his local town joined the Navy together. They had all wrestled together.
Ooh,
They got called over to the gym to try out for the all Navy wrestling team. And I think in the same week, dad had wisdom teeth taken out and tried out for the all Navy wrestling team. He never saw a shit. So you think back in the days with our boxers, our wrestling teams came from the military.
yeah, oh, yeah,
So, and comparable to what the Soviets were doing for years, again, that was just you were in the army and you boxed or wrestled for
yeah,
the Soviet Union. But it was a chance for my dad to grow up a little bit. And then, of course, I decided I wanted to grow up, went into the Navy because I wanted to. I did make dean's list the semester before I went into the Navy. So I just wanted to prove mom and dad that I could actually go to class and buckle down a little bit. It was um, an interesting time in my life. But I had a similar story on a ship with a bunch of Marines. And this one young Marine was just running his mouth. And we were out somewhere and they kept saying, "You don't want to mess with Jim. He's a wrestler." And uh, it's like, you know what? So he just kept running his mouth, kept running his mouth. And it was one of those where he kind of got back on his heels and I pushed him. And this is a guy that was 6'2". I'm 5'2". He went over one of those little pedestal tables. Of course, beer bottles flying everywhere, and they weren't ours. They were just beer bottles there. Um, I laugh. All you could see was his heels, and he goes over this, and he came up swinging, and his Marine buddies, like a wall in front of me, said, "Nope, you don't touch him." Because we knew each other as far as with the weapons guys. They had spent some time with us on the ship. So I knew the weapons division with the Marines that were with our contingent. Great guys. Matter of fact, I still stay in touch with some of them. But this was just some young kid running his mouth. And why he was going to pick on some kid that was 5'2", but needless to say, he didn't live that down for a long time. But
We on a previous show, we had Coach Chris from RD21. They meet, I think it's Wednesdays, if I get this wrong, at noon at Zoko restaurant on Glenwood. And he was a wrestler in high school as well. And I was telling him the stories in high school of you guys trying to drop weight the day of. And I remember I mentioned Dennon Williams. I remember him doing this a lot too. It was the rain suit, running in the hot shower, taking all the laxatives you could to drop a half a pound, 2 pounds, 3 pounds.
And then chewing tobacco. So you'd put
Oh, I
something
didn't
in your
know
mouth
that.
to generate spit to be able to just dehydrate yourself.
Yeah.
So
And then try to
good-
wrestle that
well,
afternoon,
good old-
right? Yeah.
And you didn't shave for 2 days either. So you were just scruffy. You looked
Yeah.
like a street urchin as far as again with and you didn't wash your hands either. If you had dirty fingernails and a scruffy beard, these folks would show up to this country high school in Millbrook
Yeah.
and they go, "Who are these? Are a bunch of..."
Yeah.
We
We got ragged on a bunch. We did.
No. But I invited some football players to come out for wrestling, buddies that I knew like Phil Armstrong, had never wrestled before. Linemen that were good athletes, but wanted to find out what a new sport was. And if you teach somebody 2 or 3 moves or 2 or 3 things that they can do with confidence, it's light years ahead of what some other kids that are just strong and athletic and don't really have anything to do. I think BNI is the same thing. You need a couple of tools that you can use to start a conversation, ask some open-ended questions, and then shut up and let them talk.
Yeah.
So
I'll bet the football players, it probably helped him in the football as well. He
So-
couldn't hold, but I'm sure the quick moves and probably more tuned to feet work.
Well, I actually talked to somebody on Friday night. I was at an event over in Garner, and one of the spouses wrestled at Cary. They wrestled way after us.
Yeah.
So this is a kid that had never wrestled before, started wrestling as a sophomore, and once he got involved and found out, one, it's exponentially fairer than any other kind of activity where pretty much same size, same weight, and it's just you against someone else. So, and he said he was all in. He was a football player, and the coach kept saying, "You need to come out. You need to come out. We need a wrestler in your weight class." He wrestled 225, so he's a big boy. But he said being a lineman for Cary and working out with wrestling, it was amazing how much quicker he was on his feet the next year. And actually went to where'd he go? Maybe Carson Newman to play school. So it's Division II school here in North Carolina.
Oh yeah, all the things apply. Little things different that apply to that. I like that. So Jim, we've enjoyed having you on the show today. If you need some financial advice or just want to talk to somebody, please search out Jim at Edward Jones. He'll be happy to help you out with anything you need. Just start answering some questions for you, kind of set you in the right direction and introduce you to the people you need to know. And his number is 919-854-5455. So again, it's Jim Bowdish with Edward Jones. Each week we love bringing these success stories to you, talking a little bit of work, a little bit of play, having some fun, a couple laughs. Please go to Triangle BNI and search, find a chapter and see what would work for you. If you or somebody you know is looking to start a business or grow a business, we'd love to even just come visit a chapter and just kind of see what it's like. And next week, we look forward to talking with you, and you will get to meet Noemi Rodriguez with Victorian Finance. Thank you for being part of Triangle BNI today.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. If you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section at nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Telestream's Wirecast software, StreamingGear.com, Carolina Apparel, and DeltaForce.net.